stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are taking a look at Horror in High Gear, the third Mythos pack in the Innsmouth Conspiracy Cycle. FFG announced the Mythos pack on Monday, and there is a high-speed chase coming for the Arkham Horror LCG. We are going to take a look at the scenario in part 1 of this preview. Part 2, we'll take a look at the player cards. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these Mythos pack previews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. FFG unveiled Horror in High Gear on Monday, although we've known this Mythos pack was coming for quite some time. I believe they spoiled the vehicle cards in this pack way back in July, so we've known that a high-speed chase was coming to the game. Of course, chases are a classic trope of horror movies, as well as the Call of Cthulhu RPG, so I'm surprised it's taken this long for designer Matt Newman to sink his teeth into the chase and bring us some chase mechanics. Now, this Mythos pack preview sort of gives us a little bit of the mechanics of how this chase is going to work, but I found that it raises a lot more questions than it answers, and we'll get into some of those questions a bit later. So the basic premise of this scenario is that the investigators are driving to the Falcon Point Lighthouse, which will be the focus of the fourth Mythos pack in this cycle, on the Old Innsmouth Road. When a high-speed chase ensues, the investigators are pursued by their enemies in the Esoteric Order of Dagon. So the investigators must use vehicles, which are story assets that are unique to this scenario. We've seen in the previous scenario, Devil Reef, there was a boat vehicle. In this case, we are using cars, and you must use these vehicles to reach Falcon Point. Now, there are at least 2 vehicles that we know of in this scenario. There's Alina Harper's car and Thomas Dawson's car, which was spoiled way back in July. Now, Devil Reef penalizes investigators who attempt to move between ocean locations without using the fishing boat. I believe it takes them their full turn to do so. So the first question I had is whether investigators could face a similar penalty in this scenario, say if they are not inside a vehicle and they decide to move to a neighboring location. How many actions will that cost them? So that is one question I had when I read this scenario preview. As for the vehicles themselves, they seem fairly similar, at least on their running side. Alina Harper's car and Thomas Dawson's car seem to have the same basic game text on their running side. The cars have a limit 2 investigators per vehicle, so you can't stuff this full like a clown car full of investigators. There's only 2 investigators per vehicle. The vehicle driver may draw the top card of the encounter deck once per round to move the vehicle and its occupants to a connecting location, a connecting road location. So it will take an action to move this vehicle. Now, the vehicles have a running side and a flip side, which we're all assuming is sort of the stopped side of the vehicle. We haven't seen the game text for the stopped side of either vehicle, so it's difficult to know what that stop side will be. But if it also requires an action to stop the vehicle and flip this card over to its stop side, it is unclear from the preview article whether it takes an action to flip the vehicle over to its running side. So that's another question I had. Once it's clear from the preview, you have to, if you want to stop the vehicle, you need to take an action. Does it also take an action to get the car running? I'd sort of assume it does, but without knowing what the reverse side of these cars is, it's hard to say. Now, that creates a lot of... It's going to require quite a few actions to move these cars along the location track. If it takes you, say, one action to move the car to a new location, one action to stop the car, presumably it's a free triggered or a free action to get out of the car. So that's going to take 2 actions in a turn just to get to a new location and get out of the car. And we haven't even started investigating, fighting, or evading yet. And then, of course, if you want to get back in the car and head to a new location, that will take you another 2 actions, presumably if it does take you a full action to get a stopped car running. So using these vehicles is going to be quite action intensive. It will be interesting to see what the Doom threshold is on the agenda deck as a result of this. Investigators are going to be spending a lot of time driving around from location to location. So hopefully they will have enough time to do that during the scenario. Now, investigators cannot enter or leave a running location. The preview article suggests that investigators either cannot take investigate actions and or discover clues while in a running vehicle. So if your vehicle is, if you are in a running vehicle, it doesn't seem like you'll be able to discover clues. So you will need to stop the vehicle and get out to discover those clues, which you will definitely want, as we will see on some of the locations that were previewed in the article. However, it's not clear from the article whether you may take other actions, such as fighting or evading. I would assume that you can fight or evade if you are in a vehicle, but the article doesn't spell that out. Presumably, the investigator who is designated as the driver will be able to take evade actions, while investigators who are passengers, or possibly even the driver, will be able to take fight actions against enemies that are converging on them in other vehicles. But unfortunately, the preview article just doesn't give us a whole lot of information to go on. So we will have to simply guess at that for the time being. Now, investigators can be in basically 2 states in this scenario. They can be inside the running vehicle or they can be outside the vehicle. And as we will see, certain encounter cards, their effects depend on whether an investigator is inside a vehicle or outside of a vehicle. So whether you are inside or outside will affect how certain encounter cards will affect you. We also, the preview article gives us a brief or a very small sort of idea as to how this scenario is set up. The location layout sort of reminds me of the Essex County Express. It's quite possible that we will start at one end of a row of locations and we will have to get to the Falcon Point Lighthouse that will be at the other end of the locations. The one thing this little diagram raised another question for me is, do the old Innsmouth Road locations remain unrevealed while investigators are inside a running vehicle? It sort of makes sense to me that they would, that like until you actually get out of the vehicle and explore the location, you don't know what it does. Now, this sort of gives, theoretically, there's nothing stopping the investigators from driving from one end of the line of locations right to Falcon Point, but I think what's going to happen is that you won't be able to complete the scenario unless you have enough clues to either advance the act deck and or we've seen locations in the past that have said you may not move into this location unless you spend X clues per investigator. So I suspect that you will need to stop at locations along the way to obviously gather enough clues to either advance the act deck or to get into Falcon's Point. So there's no point in driving from one end to the other willy-nilly. And it will take you, according to the vehicle text we've seen, it will take you an action to drive from one location to the next, and you can only move one location per turn. So it's going to be a very slow trip from one end of the location line to the other, if that's in fact how they are laid out. Now, we have seen, if we take a look at some of the locations, in this the road locations, when you turn over the old Innsmouth Road locations, they have a road keyword, and as we can see here on Fork in the Road, it is Road 2, and the Cliffside Road, it is Road 1. Now, we don't know what the road keyword does. I sort of think it might mean that it may signify the number of locations that a vehicle may move once the driver triggers that action ability on the vehicle. So say if you are at the fork in the road and you decide to trigger the action ability on Alina Harper's car, you could move 2 locations down the road if it has Road 2, or only 1 location if it has Road 1. I'm not sure, but that seems like it might be the mechanic at work here. So you can sort of, rather than move 1 location at a time, which would be very laborious in this sort of scenario, you might be able to move 1, 2, or maybe possibly even 3 locations at a time. But again, this scenario preview is it plays its cards really close to its chest, and we don't know what the road keyword will do. Now, Fork in the Road is a 5-shroud location with 1 clue per investigator. It has Road 2, and it has the free triggered ability. Investigators at this location spend 1 clue per investigator as a group to look at the revealed side of any location ahead of this one, and it's worth a victory point. This free triggered ability is why I sort of think that you will be able to use that road keyword to move multiple locations. So you could say, look at a location 2 spots down the row, and then you may, and then if you triggered the action ability on the car, you'd be able to move there. But we don't know that for sure. Now, it is a 5-shroud location. Man, that's going to be 5-shroud is rough on investigators with below average to average skill values. It's even going to be tough for high intellect seekers to discover clues there. Fortunately, there is only 1 clue per investigator there, so it's not too bad in solo. You're going to need to use all those cards that allow you to probably to cheat a clue here, rather than try to discover using an investigate action. And it is worth 1 victory point, which is always nice to see. Hopefully the XP is the victory points are generous in this scenario. It's always nice to see scenarios that are generous with their victory points. Cliffside Road is quite the opposite. It's only a 2-shroud location. It has two clues per investigator, and Road 1, whatever that means. It has the forced effect. When a vehicle leaves this location, investigators at this location as a group must spend 2 clues for each investigator in that vehicle. So when you leave this location in solo, you're spending 2 clues. If you're playing 4-player, you're spending up to 8. And if they cannot, the vehicle's driver tests Willpower X or Agility X, where X is the number of clues they could not spend. And if the driver fails, their vehicle is removed from the game, and each investigator in that vehicle takes 10 damage. Limit once per game for each vehicle, and it is worth a victory point. I also suspect that, just as an aside, I suspect that the locations are laid out ahead of time because the locations don't have any location markers on them, so they could be in any order on the road. But wow, testing. So in solo, this isn't too bad. Willpower. Say if you can't spend the clues, your willpower 2 or agility 2, that's not too bad. In multiplayer, if there, say, are limit, actually, it's even not too bad in multiplayer. If it's limit 2 investigators per car, that means you'd have to test willpower 4 or agility 4 if you didn't succeed, or if you didn't have the clues, which is. It's tough, but it's not certainly not out of the realm of possibility, especially if you pick the right driver, which I think will be important in this scenario. As we'll see, there are some other encounter cards that really demand agility, are very demanding in the agility department. So having a driver with a high agility is very worthwhile, I think, in this scenario. So yeah, if you fail this test, your car is removed and you take 10 damage. Now, we haven't seen this effect this sort of effect all that often. The only one I could really think of is the Crumbling Precipice from the Depths of Yoth. Again, this one just kills your investigator outright. 10 damage is more than enough to kill most guardians and pretty much every other investigator in the game. The big difference here being that while the road is just one skill test, falling off the precipice makes you have to fail 3 tests in order to do that. So certainly the road is a little easier to deal with than the road is a little riskier because of course you can always pull an auto fail on the road and that'll be the end of you, which I imagine is going to happen to somebody at some point. Hopefully not me, as I pull a lot of auto fail tokens. But yeah, hitting that road could be a pretty scary thing, especially if you pull that auto fail and suddenly you're dead just like that. So that is definitely not a good scenario. Of course, you are not alone on the road. You are being chased by some members of the Esoteric Order of Dagon who have a bad case of road rage. The preview article spoils 2 of them, the Hybrid Assassin and Hitvan. As we can see, both of these enemies have odd health totals, which is of course annoying. I hate enemies with 3 or 5 health, but that seems to be the way enemies are going these days. We don't see enemies with 2 health, it seems, all that often anymore, because they are so easily taken out by most weapons in the game. The Hybrid Assassin isn't that bad. He's only got 3 fight, 3 health, and 1 evade, so he's pretty... If you have to fight him, I mean, he's only got an average fight value, so he's not that hard to deal with. And if you need to get away from him, he's only got 1 evade, so he's pretty easy for most investigators to get away from. He does have Hunter, so of course he will chase you on his motorbike there. He does have this forced effect, though, that after the Hybrid Assassin moves via its Hunter keyword, if it is unengaged, it resolves its Hunter keyword again. So it has double Hunter effectively. So even if you do evade this guy, he's very easy to evade, but if you do evade him and you are not able to make up some progress down the road, this guy will catch you pretty quickly when he hunts. So I think this guy he's annoying, but he's certainly not that dangerous. He only deals 1 horror if he catches you, which will add up unless you shoot his tires out from underneath him or something like that, or just run him off the road is another option to get rid of him. The Hitvan, he's pretty beefy at 5 health. He does have a fairly average fight value of 3 and 3 evade as well. He has Hunter and Retaliate, so of course, if you do not have an above average combat skill value, this guy is a little bit dangerous to take on. He only hits for 1 damage and 1 horror, however, so he's certainly not as bad as some of the Retaliate enemies we've seen in the past, like the Hunter or like the Harbinger of Velusia and whatnot. Now the Hitvan is also isn't too bad because he cannot attack the same phase that it moves with its Hunter keyword. So if you're able to evade this guy, you can leave him in your dust, and then he will hunt to catch up to you, but he won't attack you. So you have a turn again to evade him and move on. And so you don't necessarily need to kill this guy. He's not... Hunter enemies that don't deal... I can't think of another Hunter enemy that doesn't attack the same turn it moves, but it certainly takes something out of them when you don't have to worry about taking the damage from them. And this guy doesn't hit too hard either. So, but of course, between the actions that you're going to be spending to get into your car, get out of your car, investigate, get back in your car, move, having to evade and or fight these enemies is also going to chew up a lot of your time. So again, I hope that the agenda deck has a fairly long doom threshold, so investigators will have time to reach the Falcon Point Lighthouse. If the scenario is anything like Essex County Express, Essex County had very short doom thresholds on all of the agendas, so it advanced very rapidly. So who knows? Maybe there is a big enemy that we haven't seen yet who will hit the table when the agenda deck advances, and so trying to be... I mean, it wouldn't be a high-speed chase if you didn't have to be fast. So I don't know. Maybe investigators won't have a lot of time to get everything done. So they, if it's a high-speed chase, they may have to move a lot faster than you would like, and these guys are certainly going to do their best to try to slow you down. Finally, the preview article spoiled one encounter, one treachery. Bumpy Ride, it has the revelation: if you are not in a vehicle, test 5 agility, and if you fail, take 3 damage. And if you are in a vehicle, that vehicle's driver tests 3 agility, and if that driver fails, each investigator in your vehicle takes 2 damage. This is a really interesting treachery. It does a bunch of stuff that we really haven't seen before. First off, if you're not in the vehicle, this is going to be a very difficult skill test for many investigators in the game. And if you fail it, which seems likely, it's all or nothing. So if you fail, you're taking 3 damage, which is a lot. If you are not a guardian packing 8 or 9 health, 3 health is going to be a significant chunk. 3 damage is going to be a significant chunk of your health, so that is not good. You do not want to be out of your vehicle when you hit this thing, or when you draw this thing. Now, if you are in the vehicle, this has sort of a strange... I don't think we've seen this before, where if you draw the encounter card, say I'm in a vehicle, there's 2 investigators per vehicle, I draw this card. The driver of the vehicle is the one who takes the skill test. So it's sort of like, I can't remember the name of the card, like the player card that lets you take the skill test. What is it? Let me handle this. So it's sort of got a built-in let me handle this, where I draw the card, but the driver of the car is the one who makes the skill test. However, if the driver fails the skill test, which is a little easier, it's only agility 3, so as long as your driver has a high agility, this shouldn't be too bad. Each investigator in the vehicle will take 2 damage. So it's not just your life on the line as the driver, it's everybody in the vehicle's life is on the line. So you could potentially do 2 damage to everybody if you fail this. Again, 2 damage, it's not nothing. It's not nearly as bad as 3, but it still hurts quite a bit. So this is definitely going to be a bad... it is definitely going to be a bumpy ride if you draw this card. So as we've seen, between the Cliffside Road, that location we looked at earlier, where you need to make a willpower or agility skill test to avoid driving off the cliff, and this treachery bumpy ride, it really behooves you to have a driver with an average to above average agility in order to pass these sorts of skill tests. And I'm sure these aren't the only locations and treacheries that will require a good agility. So time to dust off. If you haven't been playing Rita Young, you might want to consider her for this campaign. Silas Marsh 2. Having a 5 agility or a 4 agility will definitely be a big plus in horror in high gear to deal with some of these agility tests. Man, agility 5. Poor Harvey is crying if he is definitely gonna get hit by a car if he's not in one himself if he draws this. Is it Norman? Norman's got 1 agility. Man, oh man, that would be poor Norman's taking 3 damage for sure. That's gonna do it for the preview of the Horror in High Gear scenario. Again, this is an interesting a preview because I read it, and while I'm quite interested in this scenario, it does seem kind of gimmicky. I mean, the whole vehicle mechanic, the scenario is really going to live or die by how the vehicle mechanics work. And I mean, all Arkham Horror LCG scenarios are a little gimmicky. We don't really see, it's not very common that we see scenarios that are basically just investigate, fight, and evade, meat and potatoes scenarios like that. There's always some sort of gimmick involved. This one is probably more gimmicky than most, but I have confidence in Matt Newman and Jeremy Zorn's abilities as designers that it will all work out in the end, and this scenario is going to be a lot of fun to play. I just wish that this preview answered a few more questions about how this vehicle mechanic is actually going to work, because after I read the preview, I was left scratching my head about exactly how vehicles change up things. Like, okay, I understand I can't be in the vehicle when I discover clues, but what else can I do while I'm in a vehicle? Is that the only thing I can't do, or can I fight and evade as normal? How does this driver mechanic work? Do I have to designate a driver, or is the driver simply chosen? Say, like, if I draw a bumpy ride, do I just say, like, he's the driver and he or she's the driver and they take the test? Or, like, how does this work? When do you designate the driver? A lot of questions like that. Are the locations, I assume they're all starting on the table, but how does the vehicle move between them? What does this road keyword do? There are a lot of questions left after this preview. Certainly a lot more than I had with the previews for In Too Deep and Devil Reef. So I am looking forward to this scenario. It's going to be different. It's going to be very different, but we shall see. We shall see how this high-speed chase unfolds in Horror in High Gear. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I am also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.